Cyberpunk 2077 contains what I would describe as one of the biggest mysteries in modern gaming, next to GTA's Mount Chiliad Easter egg, which is also massive. We are, of course, talking about the FF06B5 mystery, which has tantalized the community for the better part of 5 years as of the making of this video. And while major parts of the mystery have been solved, some resolutions are still keeping most players searching for clues, as ultimately the main question remains unanswered. What is FF06B5? And what does it mean? Well, after many countless hours in game and hundreds of hours of research, I believe I may have finally found an answer. So let's go over everything we currently know and how we got here. It all started with the release of Cyberpunk 2077, and while players were enjoying the numerous launch day bugs, some other players noticed a statue in Corpo Plaza. Now, at the time, the text on the statue was red, and with so many bugs present in the game, people just assumed this was naturally one of them. Then, patch 1.3 released on August the 17th, 2021. And this update introduced new content and further stability improvements. But that was not all. The patch also changed the colour of the text on the statue to a yellowish colour to fit in more with its surroundings. This told players this was not a bug, and it was actually purposefully placed. The community went into overdrive, up into a frenzy. What could the code possibly mean? An entire subreddit was created, which now has 44,000 members, and the research did flow. People were ripping and tearing the game apart, looking for anything, just a little clue to what this code was. After a few months of searching, Powell happened to start doing some live streams, and naturally, he was asked some questions.
There's a question, is there any meaning behind FF06B5 written on the statue? I cannot tell you. Of course there's a meaning. What do you think, who do you think we are? We are CDP Red, dude. Of course there's a meaning there. It's just like, it would be so much, it would be way too easy for you. You know, some things need to be difficult to uncover. Anyway, Pavel, it means a lot for the FF06B5 community if you could clarify. I think it's currently solvable, or do we have to wait for some DLC first? Thanks. I mean, the thing is, if I will tell you, I will pretty much solve it for you, right? So I cannot really. And besides, like, you know, it's all about you guys trying to outsmart us, I would say, right? Is it? I guess so, in a way. Like, so it's definitely something. Pavel, help us with FF06B5. I mean, you know, I am believing in you. I know that you at some point will do it, you know? And it was actually funny because, like, at some point, Kira, you know, our small Sandayu, asked me, hey, Pavel, what's the solution for FF06B5? And I told Kira when we were talking in work, and Kira started laughing, you know? And not laughing in a way that, you know, it's stupid. It started laughing in a way of like, I hope so at least, that like how clever it is. So, you know. But anyway, it's not me who made it, so I'm just saying. Oh, BHR Gavi T wrote, are monks related to FF06B5? I don't think I can share this information. And the reason is why I cannot share this information, because you chumps need to solve it first, and then we can talk about it, you know? Until you solve it, you know, well, how we'll know we have solved FF06B5? You won't have any doubts that you did. Pumpkin Wizard, I just responded to you. I said that you will know when you have solved it. Like, by, you know, you will know. I cannot say more because, like, I would just spoil it. Ramirez asks about FF06B5, if it was solvable before 2.0. I mean, I was answering this question so many times, and I said, no, I am not commenting on this. It's you guys deciding what you want to do, right? And I don't know. I've seen your findings, and they are interesting. They're interesting.
Now, what FF06B5 meant at launch and what it is now are two separate things. but we'll go over this more later. So with Pavel's clues and hints ringing fresh in our minds, off we went to search all over the game again. It's just made people go even more insane, now looking into things outside of the game to try and find relevance to what the code meant. But there was nothing. Nothing that directly linked to the code, but the players had found an intricately built world of lore the developers had spent years crafting. Everything in game seemed to relate to something, because it did. The developers had done such a good job of lore and world building that it was hard to tell what was relevant and what was not. Themes of religion, symbolism, mythos, science were all repeating topics for the answer to the code, but none of it ever seemed to link to the code or its meaning. It wouldn't be until almost 2 years later, when patch 2.0 launched on September the 26th, 2023, that we would finally get some answers. But not all of them. You see, in this patch, a brand new location was added, which I'm sure you're all familiar with by now. This is when the church and the mainframe were added in the middle of the Biotechnica protein farms, a whole 2 years after we were told it's solvable in-game now. Upon entering the shack, we can immediately see a sizable mainframe of 8 servers on the opposite side of the room. In the center of the room, there's a laptop, and below it, a platform with cables connecting it to the server. Accessing the laptop, we can read 3 messages sent to Polyhister and 2 files. These messages reveal the existence of an in-game community very similar to our very own subreddit, trying to solve the FF06 B5 mystery. The first 2 emails cover approaches which did not lead anywhere, but in the third one, Tyromanta messages Polyhister about having found a promising clue. While Tyromanta was playing a vintage game that's over 50 years old, he discovered a hidden FF06 B5 sign. This was likely referencing The Witcher 3, as from 2077 going back to The Witcher's release date would be almost 50 years. After he finds this lead, he talks about how he's leaving with his laptop to pursue it. The file, A New Beginning, retrospectively confirms Tyromanta's suspicions, with Polyhister laughing at his old crazy theories. Relieved that Tyromanta finally found a real clue, the keyhole that they had to find was in a door they mistook for a wall. Polyhister then writes that he's cut off network connections to the mainframe for now and is leaving to tell his brothers and sisters. The reference to The Witcher 3 and the door that was taken for a wall is very significant, as the next-gen update for The Witcher 3 introduced an FF06 B5 secret in which you had to defeat a rock elemental to unlock a hidden door which was a portal. This led to a room full of unkillable enemies and a wall drawing that related to the FF06 B5 mystery, showing similar symbols to the laptop from Cyberpunk. With Polyhister basically telling us that they've gone to spread the word, players' attention focused on Tyromanta and where he'd actually gone. Luckily for us, and unlucky for Tyromanta, we didn't have to wait long to find out what happened to him, as we managed to find our next clue quite close to his corpse, as a mysterious laptop was found in the landfill, rather interestingly right next to a pink sign. And as a side note, now every time I see a pink sign in game, I automatically think it's an Easter egg, but that's my own delusions that I'll have to deal with in private. However, next to this pink sign was an abandoned laptop, and when opening it, we are greeted with a harsh red screen with letters and symbols from the Witcher universe on it, and the outline of an Ouroboros, an ancient symbol of rebirth, destruction, and the cycle of time, rather interestingly. This was then converted using a conversion table from The Witcher 3, and this is what we're given. Now, how this was actually decoded is probably a video in its entire self, but some of the highlights are the 2x2 columns are important, as the whole pairs of characters. There appear to be patterns around the frequency of appearance, with certain letters only appearing in certain rows, and that the 2x2 grids represent prime numbers and letters in hexadecimal digits. Using prime numbers ascending from 2 to 61, we're able to convert them all into their hex value to get a series of numbers. There is a massive breakdown of it on the subreddit, which I've linked down in the description below. If you want to deep dive into it, go and check it out, but be prepared, as it's quite in depth. Now, jumping back to the church, we'll notice that there's an old arcade which is directly hooked up to the platform by the mainframe. This This game is Arasaka Tower 3D. Within this game, we too can see our first ever true connection to FF06B5 directly, as the top score on the video game is by Polyhister and has a score of, you guessed it, FF06B5. From this point, much trial and error took place as hours of testing finally led to a breakthrough within the game. And it may relate to Polyhister's earlier comment about being a door hidden within a wall, as within the game there is lots of hidden walls. Two of these hidden doors in the game lead to what look like server rooms. One of these rooms has a magenta statue and also Spider Murphy's high score written on the wall, and the second room has no statue but has the high score of Morgan Blackhand written on it. Players found, after many hours of testing, that you need to stand in the room of Spider Murphy and the statue and let the timer run down to 270 seconds. At this point, a lock will appear on the hood, which activates a secret way to complete the game. With the unlock now activated, a room appears with numbers lining it, and the player has to enter each area to type out the code that is painted on the walls. Once this is done, it will unlock the symbol at the bottom of the hood and the player can complete the level as normal. However, instead of being taken to the next normal level, the player will now find themselves in a special area known as Level -10. Level -10 is a maze map with players having to find their way through it. Interestingly, the design of the maze when viewed from the top makes out 8 of 9 parts of a QR code, which, when stitched together, the code encodes a Python script for a tic-tac-toe game, which, when played and you inevitably lose, it will write "the winning move is not to play" to the game's console. But to get through this maze, the players need to take a path that, again, when viewed from above, spell out the letters DM plus TV, which are some of the game designer's initials. After finally making their way out of the maze, the player can complete the game as normal by defeating Adam Smasher, although you can just run past him to the exit. Upon completing the Arasaka Tower 3D game, with the secret level, the mainframe is then activated by this and turns on. It's at this point players were able to enter the numbers into the keypads on the mainframe. Now naturally you think, great, the numbers from the laptop and the Witcher game image finally make sense. This is where we have to put in their codes. Of course though, there was a problem. The codes didn't work. And this was because CD Projekt Red had actually made a bit of a mistake. You see, the codes used a hashing function to assign the numbers to the keypads on the mainframe. Only CD Projekt Red forgot to include this hashing function, and so random hash values were instead assigned to the keypads. This meant that our codes would never work, as there was no way to find out the random values that had been assigned. The mystery at this point was completely unsolvable. Broken, you might even say. Now, CD Projekt Red at the time did ask the community not to leak this information, but you know how the internet is, and it was leaked immediately. So while CD Projekt Red were trying to get a hotfix patch out to solve the issue, after about 2 weeks of waiting, data miners got fed up and started digging into the files and to see if they could find the codes. And they did. Later the issue was resolved, and it turns out that you needed to combine both the laptop and the image from The Witcher to be able to decipher the code using the same methods we described earlier. With this, players were able to translate the images into prime numbers and then into hex numbers before finally converting them into decimals, which would give us the access codes to the mainframe. So with the mainframe open from both data mining and the correct intended way now also working, players finally discovered the next step. You see, when we first investigated the laptop before entering the codes, there was a file called copycopymagenta.hxf .log, which appeared to be a log of some kind of algorithm that ran on the mainframe and finished by telling us that there was no results found. However, after entering all the codes on the mainframe, a new file on the laptop is created called copycopymagenta.hxf.success.log. Upon reading this new file, a new waypoint is created on the map in the Eastern Badlands. Arriving here, it seems that there's nothing for the player to do, but there is, however, a mattress here. If the player stands on the mattress and waits, or meditates as they would call it in-game, till about 4 AM, an event will occur. The player will experience a relic malfunction, and the following will happen. Now, one thing I want to note here that is quite interesting and doesn't ever get mentioned alongside the mystery is one of the songs in-game that was written by the music artist Grimes, who is often thought of as being Lizzie Wizzy in-game, and she wrote a song for the game called 4 AM. Now, when this song was released alongside the game, none of the cube mystery existed at that time, but the lyrics are nonetheless interesting and could directly connect to this part of the mystery. Grimes sings, "Aphrodite, I wrote your constellation into the sky. The sun's at night, I'm out late, it's 4 AM. He says, how's the weather, baby? How you been? You're gonna get sick, you don't know when. I never doubt it at 4 AM. Now, Aphrodite was the Greek god of love, beauty, pleasure, and procreation. Grimes claiming to have written this into the sky. It could be a commentary on the artificial beauty in the Cyberpunk universe, with the suns at night being a reference to the brightness of the city life with its constant neon glow. But it could also represent the cube itself. Also, alongside this, Grimes tells us that it's 4 AM, obviously, and as someone engages her in casual conversation, perhaps at a bar or a club, she's emotionally distant from them, as her thoughts are cast out into the bleakness of the city around her. But perhaps the most interesting line is the final line, in which she tells us that we're gonna get sick. We don't know the exact time, but never doubt it'll be 4 AM. Now, with the cube mystery spawning at some time after 4 AM, with the player becoming sick via a relic malfunction, I thought this was a direct tie-in to the events of the cube mystery. The reference to Aphrodite and the constellations could be what we see in the cutscene, a magenta moon that is present in the sky. But this is just all my own speculation. Do let me know what you think about it in the comments below. However, this is all well and good with cube mysteries and hidden laptops, but none of it has ever answered, still to this day, what FF06B5 actually is. But after much contemplation and research, I think I've finally managed to figure it out. You see, I think it's obvious at this point what FF06B5 started out at is definitely not the same mystery that we have today. As if you remember, Powell told us that it was solvable in-game way before any of the cube mystery was ever implemented. So FF06B5 must have had a meaning back when the game was released. He also told us that it was a joke and that it was seen as funny and clever by one of his colleagues. All this points to say that the cube is not the answer to FF06B5, but it's not very credible if I just tell you the meaning of the code, so I'm gonna let Powell tell you, in his own words, the exact meaning of the code FF06B5, at least what it meant originally when the game was launched.
This scene, it was really important for us to introduce first and most important story threads. And what do you actually find out here? You find out here that he is a convict. You find out here that he has his old days numbered and he is going to be killed no matter what. And he has decided to really do something with the time he has left. And it's a very important story thread that we were playing a lot with Cyberpunk 2077, which is existentialism. Philosophers always said, you know, in the thread of existentialism, that our life has no meaning unless we give it a meaning. We were playing a lot with Cyberpunk 2077, which is existentialism.
And that right there is your answer, folks. Existentialism. Existentialism is the philosophical movement that focuses on individual freedom, choice, and the meaning, or the lack thereof, life. It emphasizes the importance of personal experience and responsibility in shaping your own existence. Existentialists believe that life inherently lacks meaning, and it's up to each person to create their own purpose through actions and decisions. The code then is a visual representation of existentialism. It's an object that is otherwise completely indifferent to the world around it. That is until someone comes along and assigns meaning to it. Now that object, still completely unregarded by its surroundings, suddenly has purpose and meaning. We, the player, came along and created purpose and meaning in the sign. We collectively chose that it had meaning. This is also further confirmed by a quest in-game that has V doing the very same thing. The quest is called Killing in the Name and is playing on Rage Against the Machine's Killing in the Name of, a song that is about exposing government corruption, abuse of power, and racial issues. When V gets a message asking to check out the Bot Mass Collective and is then sent on a wild goose chase, hacking data terminals all over the city before finally it's finding its source, with even Johnny commenting that you'll join all these dots and all you'll find is a dick. Oh god, I'm sorry, that's my best Keanu impression. It eventually leads us to Pacifica, where we find what appears to be an old fortune teller arcade machine that's been hooked up to the internet, and has so gained a massive group of followers online who think its every word is divine wisdom. He then has the option to either end it or to let it continue. But again, this is a great example of exactly what happened to us, the players, and the FF06B5 mystery. We, the players, saw a sign in the game and decided it had meaning. It was never a mystery, it was a clever joke about something the devs had spent years weaving into the game. Unfortunately for them, none of us figured this out and decided it must have meaning. This clever joke backfired on the devs, and existentialism became a very real problem for the devs themselves. The devs, realizing that players would not be happy with that being the answer after all the thousands of hours of time that people had dedicated to the mystery, they decided in the 2.0 update to add a resolution that might at least satisfy most of the now weary and exhausted player base. And that, folks, is what FF06B5 means. Existentialism. Or at least that's what it used to mean. And for those left thinking that this can't possibly be the answer to what the code means, I'll leave you with this. This was taken from the cube's texture file that, when patched together, became a readable QR code. And this is the hidden message that is actually written on our floating cube. You've been looking long enough. You can stop now. It's over. Or is it? No, really, it is. One thing ends, another begins. Except nothing's beginning or ending. That's just your gonk mammal brain trying to make sense of your world, to create order, to control, to try and delay the inevitable realization that you're nothing. We're nothing. Mathematics, physics, chemistry, in the grand scheme of things, nothing but tools to acquire power, hardly more advanced than the first rock we grabbed to bash each other's skulls. Isn't that liberating? You're welcome. Go, be free, frolic like the over-evolved primates you are. And for all you seekers and fools finding patterns where there are none, creating order out of chaos, here's a little secret for you. This isn't the first time we've met, and it won't be the last. But for now, you can rest easy. celebrate your adorable little achievements by cracking open a broseph and marveling at being the only creatures on this planet with opposable thumbs. Just don't read too deep into it. In the grand scheme of things, you get the gist. Catch you around, Toon Batter.